First on our agenda is everybody have from our last two meetings. At least one that you got to share. I hope you had a chance to take a look at that. Yes, I call a call to order, Madam Secretary. Thank you. All righty. So the minutes are from our last two meetings from last year, May 4th, and from our meeting in September. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes? We can do that. Thank you. A second. Thank you, Heather. I was channeling to you. All right. Does anybody have any changes they need to make to the minutes before we call a vote? Okay, without objection, call for a vote of minutes from May 4th and September 7th for the Community Advisory Council. If you're not a member or you'd like to be a member, raise your hand and vote anyway. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Without opposition, the meeting minutes pass. Next, Don Martin here for our Board of Education update. Thank you, Ms. Martin.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you to CAC for allowing me to be here and all of our administration tonight to continue our Unite U-46 work. So thank you again for that. I am going to try to keep my little presentation short so that we can get on to why everyone is here this evening. Fall is always a busy time in our schools and for our families, and this fall is no exception. This month, U-46 students and their families have a number of ways to learn about more opportunities available here in the district. Earlier today, more than 2,000 eighth graders attended Explore at the Now Arena to help them better understand the connection between the classroom and future careers. Also, for the eighth graders, the application process for the Magnet Academies opened yesterday. All 5 of the Magnet Academies are hosting informational nights over the next 2 weeks. Families of 8th grade students should certainly learn more about the Magnet Academies. And having had 2 kids now go through the process, even if your kid is in 7th grade, I would encourage you to start looking at the information now because there's just a lot there to think about. Elementary families interested in learning more about gifted programming can attend an informational session next week. Current sophomores and juniors and their parents who are interested in the full-time dual credit program have 2 opportunities this month to learn more. That's a great program that can save students thousands of dollars in college costs. All of the details for these events can be found on the U-46 website. If you go to the calendar and kind of click through, you can get the different links for information. Our next Board of Education meeting is Monday, October 23rd, so a couple of weeks out. It is always held at the Educational Service Center. You can come in person, you can watch on YouTube. If you would like to give a public comment, that can also be done either in person or you can sign up and register to give your public comment via the YouTube channel. You can also submit public comments in writing and they get shared on our board kind of page. I think that's it. Thank you so much. We'll hand this back.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. So the next portion of the meeting would be a public comment. You're certainly welcome to come up. I would keep in mind that we're going to be talking a lot about a lot of things going on in the district, and you'll have plenty of time later on during the Unite 46 session to share your opinion. I mean, that's really why we have you here tonight anyway. So with that said, does anybody have any public comments not related to Unite U-46 they'd like to share? We'd give everybody 2 minutes to make those comments. Okay. Next, our commit. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, please come up and you have 2 minutes.
Hi, my name is Katrina Neal. I have a student at Hilltop and a student at Ellis. I just wanted to put some public comments. I attended the last board meeting when this was announced and did some public comments regarding Ellis, which we know is going to be retired, and asked for some updates. And I just wanted to thank the board. They recently did replace the bike rack. So I just wanted to put public comment. I know we always kind of gripe when we get up here, but this time I just want to say thank you for caring about the students at Ellis and getting their bike rack replaced so they don't have to put their bikes on the stop signs anymore. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. All righty. Any other public comments? Okay, great. We'll move on to the next agenda meeting for this item is committee updates. First up would be Heather with our Instructional Initiatives Committee.
Hi, everyone. So let's see, let me look at the notes here. So I'm Heather Matthews. I am the co-chair of the Instructional Initiatives Committee, along with Ian Horn, who is over at the Marching Band Festival right now. But we'll be here shortly. We so we co-chair the Instructional Initiatives Committee, and that committee we're doing a deep dive into kind of a results and reflection approach of a lot of the initiatives that the district has done in the past several years. So we take an initiative that the district has rolled out, and we kind of look at what is the data showing, what are the impacts, what's going well, what's not, what are they running to, things like that. How are things evolving? And so we had a lot of great success with that last year, and we learned a lot. I think it was really helpful for the district and started a lot of really great conversations. So we are continuing that theme this year, and our next meeting will be Wednesday, October 25th at 7 p.m. on Zoom. The topic will be magnet academies and educational pathways. So what we're going to be digging into is what are the results we're seeing from the changes to the magnet and academy path in the educational pathway application process. So, and then we have future meetings. November 29th, we'll look at U-46 rising results and reflection 3 years in. And in January, we'll look at impact of gifted services at the high school with the changes that they've made recently. So look forward to seeing you there. The links are on the CAC website for those interested. And come find me after the meeting if you have any questions or want more info on how to join if you can't find it online. So thank you.
All righty. Thank you very much, Heather. Next up with our Specialized Student Services Committee update will be Ginger Hertz.
Hello, I am with Specialized Student Services, which is children who have or students that have a 504 or an IEP, and even those that are in private placement. And our next meeting is actually a presentation titled Executive Functioning, Preparing Your Child for Independence at All Ages. And this is presented by Joey Williams from Advanced Behavioral Solutions. So what this is focusing on executive functioning, which is problem solving, planning, and decision making. And working on improving that has been shown to have a positive impact on a person's mental health and their overall ability to successfully navigate social, emotional, academic, and daily life skills. So we hope that you can come and join us. It is on Zoom, and Joey Williams is a fantastic presenter. We've had her in previous years, and that is Tuesday, October 24th at 7 p.m. And all of our meetings are on Zoom. Being parents of children that have special needs, it's better for all of us to meet that way. So when we have a presentation one month, then we don't have a meeting. So we will present in October, and then there'll be a meeting in November on our CAC website. But come talk to me if you're like, my child has an IEP or a 504, I need to be on this committee, and we would love to have you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ginger. All right, that about wraps it up for the Community Advisory Council portion of the meeting tonight. Just a couple quick notes. We will have another session, part 2 of this, November the 2nd. So we'd like, if you're enjoy this, we'd like to see you there and invite your friends. And then probably our most successful meeting and most informational and a really good chance for everybody to get to know all the folks in the district. You'll get to meet all the board members, you'll get to meet all the administration executives. That's December 7th. That'll be a roundtable. That one will be a Zoom meeting, and the November 2nd will be a live session like this one. So that's all we have for the CAC session tonight. We'd love to see you at our other sessions, and we appreciate all your time and effort coming here tonight. I know some of you came straight from work and probably haven't had dinner, so thank you very much. And I'll give it over to, you ready? Okay. Oh, we need to adjourn. A motion to adjourn. Thank you, Heather. A second. So adjourned. Carly Menez, thank you very much.
Thank you. I just want to ask, I know we have some parents and community members in the back.
I want to welcome you to please come and sit up front here. There's some handouts at the tables that we'll be doing some group activities later on. So please, there's some empty seats here. There's a table here, table here, table up here, and a few seats here. So I'll give you a minute to come up front, please. And I am going to welcome Diana because she's going to help us kick off this Unite session today.
All right, while everyone's getting started, I'll start. Thank you all for coming tonight. My name is Diana Gunstein. I wear a lot of hats in my community. The most important one being a mom of 3 boys within the district at 3 different schools, my oldest being at the Academy at South Elgin. So I'm very invested in the changes that could potentially be happening. Thank you for joining us for the first Unite for U-46 community session of the year. I'm glad to see so many of you here and looking forward to some great conversation and feedback on our ongoing facilities work. If you haven't already, please sign in at your table and introduce yourself to others at your table. Later this evening, you'll be working in groups on an activity we designated to help get your feedback and guidance on the presentation. Just a few more logistical details before we get started. There are forms at your table to complete the small group exercise later this evening after the presentation. We also have a few different ways for you to record questions you would like from someone from the district to answer. The district is committed to responding personally to each of these. So please either complete one of paper forms, submit your questions to Let's Talk, or the Unite U-46 email shown here. At this point, I would like to turn it over to Dr. Suzanne Johnson, the superintendent of U-46.
Thank you, Diana. And I also want to extend a welcome to everyone who is here tonight. It is wonderful to see so many of you here and involved and certainly interested in the work that we have ahead of us. I am Suzanne Johnson. I am the new superintendent of School District U-46. I am very excited and honored to get to be part of this work. I have been a career educator in U-46. I graduated from this building a billion years ago. And so I've seen many sides of U-46 and I've seen it shift. And I'm also a parent. I have students in U-46. So I too have worn different hats and I wear a couple of different hats usually at one time as well. So to be able to be part of this work and bring this forward is an honor. And I am beyond excited to get to be part of this with you. So tonight, though, as we get started, I'm going to provide a little bit of the history about how we managed to get here. Because I think for some of you, it seems like we suddenly appeared and arrived with this really significant plan. In actuality, we have spent many years really contemplating and working on trying to get the evidence together, get data together, and bring you things to react to and respond to that will bring U-46, all of U-46, into this century. So in 2018, it's like a long time ago, our Board of Education issued a request for a proposal to conduct a facilities audit for the district. So that means looking at all of our schools and looking at the space, looking at the age, looking at how even at that time in 2018, those buildings aligned to the instructional environments you want your students to be in. All right. Many of you here, I saw a few hands wave, when I said I'm a graduate of U-46, you're like, I am too. And so we've seen those buildings. Reality is, though, the building shouldn't look the way they did when I was a student in this district, The world has changed and it's going to continue to change. And we want our students to have the best opportunities to learn and be prepared when they graduate from U-46. So with that being said, we brought in DLR, which is an architectural firm, to take a look at our buildings and our facilities and to bring forward some considerations for us, that in-depth review, and to present that to our Board of Education. We did that in the fall of 2021. So COVID, of course, like so many things, kind of slowed that down a little bit. And in 2022, our board accepted the recommendations to move forward with a plan. And Unite 46 also came forward at that time, The opportunity to bring our community together to be able to plan for the future And in December of 2022, as many of you will remember, the board approved the leaders' visions for Unite 46, the goals, the aspirations, the things that we wanted to see happen. And including in that recommendation, or included, I should say, was a bond proposal that would be placed on the ballot for facilities updates. And in April of 2023, that of course came forward. And significance there is that our community rallied around that together. Across 11 communities, 90 square miles, it was an overwhelming yes. A vote, I like to think, or a affirmation of what we believe in for our children, for our students, and for our future. And that's significant, and that should be celebrated. And so I thank you for that. And I thank all of our leaders here, so many of you who had a hand in bringing that forward. About a week and a half ago then, the Board of Education approved our first round of construction projects as part of that facilities plan. The focus in this first round is to ensure that we're able to move all of our middle school students to safe, modern learning environments when we shift our 6th grade from elementary to middle schools. And you're going to hear quite a bit about this tonight and what that includes. This school year, we will be working in consultation with our Board of Education to make significant decisions about how and where we invest our funds to support future needs. During Unite 46, we recognized the very real need in our elementary buildings, including schools that date back to the 1800s. We have buildings that are 130, almost 140 years old. They were a great investment in 1880, right? But we now have the opportunity to invest differently for our students. And we've recognized, right, that we're going to need to bring forward several recommendations concerning elementary buildings. And our goal is to have that occur to winter break. And that is what we shared with the Board of Education about a week ago. So as you can see, this is incredibly exciting. It's going to be very busy. And we will continue to plan collaboratively and responsibly as we move forward. I'm going to shift now. So this evening, why are we here? We're going to spend some time giving you an overview of our phase 2 charge, right? What responsibilities and goals we have ahead of us. We're going to set that new data and information, how we plan to refine our plans and next steps as well. It's like, ooh. I'm just making sure that one's a little bit, okay, that's all. All right, so I'm going to outline several, I should say, our charges. So first, there's a full copy of the charges from the Board of Education in your meeting packet tonight. But I'm going to review some of those key goals as I mentioned, I get started. And the first is recent updates, including new data that's become available over the last several months that we are going to continue to fine tune, or you'll hear us say, using as our plans move forward. Of course, this is a significant responsibility. We need to continue to monitor our data so that as we make recommendations, it's aligning with that. We're also going to work and continue to be available to hear from our community to prioritize our district standards. Those standards are the things that our families would like to see in our schools. So you will be assisting us in determining what those standards look like. And we'll spend time tonight on that very activity. Just making sure I'm in key here. Some of the new data that we're going to share tonight is related to our enrollment forecasts. And this includes capacities of our buildings and other considerations that we're going to use to determine how many schools we will need moving forward. Our enrollments have already dropped back by 20%. In 2014, in U-46, we had almost 42,000 students at the time. This year, we are approximately at 34,000. You're going to see that data. We're also going to present to you our birth rate data, right? How many births are happening within our 90 square miles, and then approximately how many of those students arrive in our buildings. That's important data Because as we review our building needs, our facility needs, and the needs of our students, we'll be making those decisions and bringing forward recommendations to make sure that we're operating as efficiently as we can. And we, of course, are utilizing our resources to provide the best learning environments that we can for our students, particularly at the elementary level. Later this year, we will also make sure that we shift our focus to begin the discussion around boundary changes. I think it was less than 30 minutes after the board meeting on the 18th, and I received the first "let's talk about boundary changes." So I know that that's an important topic. Our work here, though, will really focus on criteria for boundary changes. And when I say criteria, that's going to include things like walking buildings or busing buildings, utilizing major intersections, landmarks as places to create boundaries as well. Currently, you hear us describe the district as the east side of the west side. The west side's everything, the west side of the Fox, and everything else is east. And we use things like Route 59, Schaumburg Road, 1920, many times as boundaries for a variety of reasons. Those are going to be the same type of criteria that we ask for information from you. Also, discussion around feeder patterns, right? Is it important that an entire elementary school moves on to the same middle school and an entire middle school move on to the same high school? Things that we'll be seeking your feedback on. We'll listen to those interests and those. I think that's covered this one as well. We'll talk about what it looks like when we transition in several years to that new in the past and different ways that we have done that. We started, and I already shared, I think, some of this with you as well. So this is phase 2 of our process. As I highlighted for you already, $79 million in referendum bonds, a 63% vote across all 3 of our counties and the 90 square miles. It was significant, and again, an amazing sign of commitment to bond proposal that was successful last spring. And so I thank you. Allow us then to build new buildings in U-46. Here this evening, forward and administration. This in your packets tonight, you can review an update been underway to implement recommendations since December, and we dive items in more detail tonight. Here are some additional principles as we move forward. And as I shared earlier, these recommendations were approved. The community voted in favor. So here's our list of guiding principles that have not changed and are still front and center in our vision as we move forward. I think the item all of you focus on today. Last year, we made the difficult decision to hire 2 elementary schools, Hawk Hollow and Garfield. Of course, Hawk Hollow is being renovated, right, being turned into a middle school. And on September 25th, the board approved to retire also Abbott and Ellis Middle School. In all of these cases, we have ensured that the impacted students will be attending modern, safe schools. Schools that are all closer to the standard that we are establishing for learning environments and activities and social emotional learning across the district, and many of which as well will likely receive additional renovations as we move forward. In the case of Garfield, Ellis, and Abbott, it will result in a dramatically improved learning environment. Even for Hawk Hollow students, a relatively new building, they were also able to transition to one of two buildings built at roughly the same time in 2008, Prairie View. Again, some of our newer builds. So I want to highlight that. I know that that is something we've received questions on as well from our community as we do have some changing factors. Of course, we will continue to take a look at. And it would be irresponsible of us if we put these factors out. Variables, they change at some points. We have to work to get new data and then to also share that with you. We do have this new information and shared new information, birth rates about U-46 enrollments, and you will see this included later on tonight in our as I mentioned, our enrollment numbers have continued to decline, and we have small incoming classes due to that birth rate in our attendance area as well. We are planning to make these significant investments in our facilities, and in so doing, that cost of renovation is ongoing as well. So that will impact the scope of some of the work that we are able to complete. And we'll make sure that we also continue to provide that with you. And as we've presented in previous updates as well, we continue to look at property as it becomes available also within our attendance area. We've been working at establishing standards for the acreage that is needed for schools. And so we have those standards, meaning enough space that the school is able to be built so that it's safe and it's accessible and it provides the appropriate learning environment for the age of the students in that building. That looks a little bit different for pre-K and then high school. We also want to have green space around the building, right? So we want to be able to have space for students, for families, staff to be outside. And we recognize that there are other locations that would be safer that are not perhaps in the midst of significant traffic, really busy areas as well. So we will continue to look at those options and keep the community and land acquisitions as well. So next this evening, we're going to transition, as I've referenced, sharing the update on that data that we use to form and prioritize this work. And so tonight, I'm going to reintroduce to you Brian Lindholm, our Chief of Staff, who, of course, has been here along all of these meetings. And I know he's probably a very familiar face for many of you at this time. Brian.
Thank you, Dr. Johnson. Yeah, I've done a lot of these presentations over the last year to like 4 or 5 people or 8 or 10, but it's a lot better when there's a group like this. So thank you all for coming. This is going to be a great opportunity to share important information with you and to hear your feedback on some of the decisions and on some of the updates to our work. So Dr. Johnson talked about the rate and how that directly impacts our enrollment. So I did want to just spend a minute on that. This chart represents the number of babies born in the U-46 attendance area over roughly the last 15 years. So starting from 2006 to 2021, and you guys see as you go from left to right, you normally want things seeing going up and to the right on charts like this, right? This is going down and to the right and at a pretty steep rate. So this is an overall decline of about 40% in the last 15 years. And I'm going to show you some slides here coming up that will show you like that is far and away the biggest factor that's driving our declines in enrollment. It is not, if there's any narrative about U-46 losing more students to charter schools, private schools, homeschooled, we've got data that shows that that's really not the case. Yes, of course, we do have some students who choose those other routes to their education, but not at any increased rate over what we've seen historically. There's just fewer school-age children coming into U-46. So here we go with some nice simple graphics to explain it. So if on average, for every 10 babies that are born inside our boundary area, 7 of those will attend one of our U-46 kindergarten programs 5 years later. Okay. Means 3, these kind of grayed out down here, they might be homeschooled. They might be at a charter school, at a private school. Their parents might be keeping them home and not attending kindergarten since it's not required in the state. We also know there's some kids who move out of U-46 after they're born and before they hit school age. but we know there are kids who move in that same time frame, and that tends to be kind of about a wash. But in general, we will get about 7 out of every 10 kids that are born will become our kindergarten students 5 years later. And we've got data that goes back many years that shows it tracks very closely to this. It's somewhere between 65% and like 73%. But if we say 7 out of 10, we can call it pretty closely what our kindergarten enrollment is going to be based on how many kids were born 5 years previously. So what this shows then is exactly that. The line at the top are the births from 2014 through 2021. And then the line in the green below are the kindergarten enrollments 5 years later. And you see they're almost perfectly correlated. There's a little variation. If you few of these where you see where it'll dip down or jump back up a little bit. But what this basically means is as we're trying to anticipate what our enrollment forecast should look like in the next several years, we pretty much know what our kindergarten class are going to be in the next 3 or 4 years because we already know how many kids were born 5 years prior. So once you get a little further out than this, we're having to forecast and make some projections about how many kids are going to be born. But for the next 4 or 5 years, our forecasts are pretty solid, assuming that 7 out of 10 ratio holds true. And we don't have any reason to think that it won't. And the thing to point out here is, if you notice the 2000 student line here, and you see the last data point in the green line all the way to the right, so that's 2026. That's the year that we're talking about making the shift. If these numbers hold true, we'd have a kindergarten class of smaller than 2000 students. Just to give you an idea, it wasn't that long ago that our classes were 3000 students, and this would be the first class that would be below 2000. So it's just indicative, I guess, of the declines that we're seeing. And we're really waiting for that birth rate to level out so that we can see like where's the bottom in this thing and when may we start to see some signs of stabilization or recovery. And so far, unfortunately, the births have just continued to decline year over year. So every year we anxiously wait for that birth data. We hope that it shows that it starts to level out. We just haven't quite gotten to that point. Okay, I'm sorry, these numbers are really tiny. I think the point here is this is our enrollment last year by grade level. And again, the only thing I hope you can see is that the big bars are all the way off to the right and the little bars are off to the left, okay? So this shows that in our high school classes, we still have about 3000 kids per class. So the star all to the right, that was our class of 2023. We had about 2,900 kids who graduated at the Now Arena last May. Okay. Our kindergarten class last year that would be graduating 12 years later, they were more like 2,300 students. And I can tell you that our kindergarten class for this year is more like 2,200 students. So what's happening to us every year is you have a big class of 2,900 or so that graduates and moves out of the system, and they're replaced by a much smaller class coming in as our new kindergarten class. Because these grade levels, they tend to stay pretty steady as these kids move from first grade to second grade to third grade. The number in that class will stay pretty close. So in other words, if we had 2,900 who graduated last May, I could look it up, but I'm sure it was about 2,900 kindergartners 12 years before, because we have some kids who move out, some kids who move in, but majority of our students who start here end up staying here, and the move-ins and move-outs tend to balance roughly. So it's another just indicative of as these larger classes move out and we have smaller classes coming in, we're unfortunately going to be in a position where we have class sizes more in the 2,100 range. And then what that will do to the overall enrollment in the district is it's going to drive it down somewhere below 30,000. And as Dr. Johnson had said, when I joined the district, we were closer to like 42,000. I think that was the high water mark. So if we're at less than 35 this year, we're already down about 20. And it looks like we could lose, say, another 20% before things would settle out somewhere below 30,000. So that's just to give you a feel for what the overall enrollment of the district is going to look like. And when we talk about making some of these decisions about how many schools we should operate to run cost effectively as a district, that has to come into play. There is no way we need as many elementary schools at 28,000 students as when we had 42,000 students. It just would not be, it would not be responsible to our community, to our taxpayers to continue to operate in that fashion. So we're gonna have some tough decisions to make. So with that, this was kind of just to frame give you some context of some of the data that we are looking at constantly and that are informing some of our decisions, including some of the updates to the middle school plan that we're going to spend quite a bit more time on tonight. And I will hand it over to Dr. Annette Acevedo to walk through some of our latest middle school developments. Dr. Acevedo is our Assistant Superintendent of Schools. It's a great job, and here she is.
Buenas noches. Good evening, everyone. So yes, I am tasked with talking a little bit about why, right? Why these improvements are necessary. And so when the Unite U-46 committee decided to make recommendations to the board in December of 2022, one of the things that they really talked about was, how can we make sure that our middle schools are ready to accept sixth grade students, right? And be able to ensure that the learning environment is ready for teaming, is ready for inquiry-based learning. And so, they decided that they wanted to make some recommendations. And one of the things that we decided to do was ensure that we visited our middle schools and kind of got, gauged where our middle schools were at. And so some of our board members visited the middle schools, and what we quickly saw were there was some updates, a lot of work that needed to be done if we wanted to make sure that our schools were equitable learning places across the entire district for all of our students. One of the things that I think about, that really makes me think about the why here is I was just at Larson Middle School presenting to some students. And because I was, like Dr. Johnson, a former U-46 student, and when I was presenting to them, I told them that I was a student at Larson. And one of the questions they asked me was, well, how has the school changed? And I stopped for a minute. I was like, I don't know. And I said, well, my locker looks exactly the same. The lunchroom looks exactly the same. This looks exactly the same. And I was like, it really hasn't changed. That was in the 80s, right? So that really, to me, tells a story about why we need to make these improvements. That was just like, a perfect question for kids. So let me go to this next slide. So what critical to sixth grade to middle school? One of the things, how many of you here have middle school students or are middle school teachers? Okay, I knew this was going to be what everybody wants to hear and talk about. So we know that when we think about the development cognitively, physically, social, emotionally, right, psychologically, our sixth graders, that they are more aligned to our seventh and eighth grade students. Once again, if you hang around with them a little bit, you recognize that very quickly, right? Another thing that we do know as well, that this period is the greatest period of change in the human life besides infancy. Do you guys know that? We've talked about that, but it's pretty significant. So we knew that we want to create learning environments where we can have students who are of the same age group, similar needs, similar strengths, and try to work with them together. And so before explaining a little bit more about how our middle school model does that, I want you to understand what our current sixth graders, right, what a day is like for them in elementary school. So they attend school for approximately 6 hours. They are with one teacher most of the time. And they have, they start the morning with, they arrive, breakfast, maybe a morning meeting, and then they have a language and reading block. Then they have math instruction. Once again, all of this primarily the same teacher. And then once a week, our PE library, and then they go back to writing. That's what it looks like for for sixth grade. So if you think about what we currently have for middle school students, they go to school for 8 periods. They have 5 core subjects. They take 2 elective courses, lunch, and PE. Depending on their program, they might just have 1 elective course and maybe, Spanish language arts or something else, right? So that's what it's like for them currently. With the model that we're proposing, we're calling a true middle school model has what's called interdisciplinary teams. And some people really call that the heart and soul of middle school. Okay, and so with those interdisciplinary teams, students are grouped about 120, 150 students with the same, there's about 4 to 5 core subject teachers that teach. And this is an example for gen ed. Once again, it would look different. If you're in dual language, you would have a dual language teacher, and you know, maybe a Spanish language arts, social studies teacher, part of that, or it would be here, it says elective. So you have a math teacher, language arts teacher, science teacher, social studies teacher. These teachers, they are part of a small learning community where you're really getting to know the students very well. There are a lot of benefits to this, and I want to don't want to forget to talk about some of these benefits. And I know there's another slide on that, but what's important here is, you know, when you have these small learning communities, it really helps build a sense of belonging. It helps build student motivation. It helps in attendance. It helps with parent-teacher relationships, home school connection. One of the things that you can really do when you have teams of teachers across these different content areas is you can talk about the connections across different contents, right? You can talk about, you can plan across different disciplines. You can look at standards and say, what are some common themes or what are some common areas that we can teach that we can teach in for example, English or language arts that we can also cover in social studies and maybe even in math or maybe even in science. So it's that integrated curriculum that students are already receiving at elementary school, where we really try to integrate what they're learning across the different content areas. And that's something we can do when we're doing teaming. Wanted to show you this so you can see how the middle school teaming model could look at a school. This is a sample of Kenyon Woods Middle School. And you would see that the students would be, our aim is to keep students in the same area, in the same wing. So we would have 6th grade students in this one wing, and that also will help kind of build, enhance, keep that sense of community with that group, because their classes would be in the same area with the same group. And so, you know, in this example, you see that they would have, I think there's 9 classrooms, 2 science labs, and they're all together. Their lockers would be together. This is, you know, the 6th grade wing. There could be a 7th grade wing, 8th grade wing. Okay. I mentioned already, you know, some of the benefits that we see, but once again, you can see that here. Personalized learning, foster strong teacher-student relationships, provides opportunity for curriculum integration, right? For that inquiry-based learning. We want to make sure that students are engaging in, you know, complex, cognitively demanding tasks, complex tasks, that they can work together, that they're doing hands-on project-based learning. And we really feel that with this model, that's going to facilitate that and foster that learning. And, you know, we feel that it's going to create those creative thinkers that we want, those innovators. So I think it's super exciting. And I'm just really excited to be part of this work. I'm going to pass it on to Brian again, but I hope you're as excited as I am about what this can mean for our middle schools and something that we really need. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Annette. So now we're going to move on to some of the recent updates and big decisions that we've made in collaboration with the Board of Education. So at our board meeting on September 25th, the board did approve a resolution that called for some pretty significant decisions to how we're going to move forward in our middle schools. So it did call to bump out the timing for the shift of 6th grade into the middle school 1 year further out. So it's now 26-27. So this year's 3rd graders would be the first 6th grade class that would move to middle school and out of the elementary schools. So it's 1 year later than we had originally planned. And the reason for that, the next couple points, is that we also called for building a new middle school, which I'll tell you more about tonight. Very exciting. Haven't done that in U-46 in quite some time. And significant additions to 2 of our existing middle schools, Bull and Kenyon Woods. And then it did have the difficult decision to retire Abbott Middle School and Ellis Middle School after the 25-26 school year. And again, we'll get into more detail on the next few slides. Thank you. So the first project in our middle school transition is the conversion of Hawk Hollow Elementary, as Dr. Johnson had mentioned in Bartlett, from an elementary school to a middle school. This project is off and going. So we've had architects who worked on the design for several months. You see a rendering here of what the front of the building would look like. There's also a QR code that will take you to this pretty cool sort of interactive fly-through video to walk through the inside of the building and see all the different kind of spaces. It will look and feel very different from any of our current U-46 middle schools. And I think that will help you sort of appreciate maybe what the future of U-46 project. We've been the process right now of bringing construction recommendations to the board. So we did the bidding process. We will be bringing the recommendations later in October with the idea that they would be breaking ground early next year. So February 2024, we said this would allow us to take occupancy of this building still in August of 2025. So we're going to have some decisions to make in terms of what does the first year of operation of Hawk Hollow Middle School look like if the rest of the sixth graders don't shift up until the following year. We may have just 7th and 8th graders start at Hawk Hollow that first year and do some kind of localized boundary changes, in that part of the district. We really still need to work through a lot of those details. So I don't have those answers for you tonight, but just can tell you that we're working through lots of different scenarios, and that's certainly something that we're keeping in mind. Yeah, clicker back here. So the other thing we did mention was that we were building a new middle school, and you may be asking, like, why would we build a new middle school? We have spent a lot of time touring our existing middle schools in, say, the last year as an administrative team with architects, with engineers, with our Board of Education. And we have two schools, two of our oldest middle schools, Abbott and Ellis, as we mentioned, that after a lot of scenarios we looked at, the decision was basically that it was just not to try to do all of the updates that would be required into sort of modern middle schools that would serve us well going forward. And once we decided that the buildings as they currently stand today, it was not practical to convert those buildings. At that point, they sit on land that if we were starting over and building a new school, those are never lots that we would pick to build a middle school. They sit on very small lots. Ellis, it's on a very busy road. There's lots of reasons that it made it very challenging in terms of what our options were there. I think actually I'm just going to leave it at that. So there's too many words on a slide. I feel like I got to pick up here. In terms of where we would like to build this middle school, at some of our recent board meetings, we have been public about some of the properties that we're interested in. There is a property on Rorson Road in unincorporated Elgin that is directly adjacent to Hilltop Elementary, that we are working to finalize a purchase and sale agreement, and we'd love the new middle school there. So it's about 12 acres of land. And if you look at I don't know if I have a pointer here now, the brighter green portion at the bottom is the new land that we'd be acquiring. But the benefit here is it would add this to campus because it butts right up to the existing Hilltop Elementary site. And Hilltop Elementary sits on almost 20 acres, which is unusual for us in U-46. We don't have very many schools that have that kind of ground. So the rendering that you're looking at here, and this is preliminary, so don't draw any conclusions from this. The yellow blocks, it'd be where the new middle school could sit on that ground. And you see it's taking advantage of some of the existing Hilltop Elementary ground that's really not being used. So this shows some athletic fields, off to the bottom right corner there, and it shows the school, kind of stretching across some of the new property that we'd be acquiring and then into the Hilltop Elementary ground. But again, this is one of just a number of possibilities. But I think the idea is we're not just acquiring 12 acres. We're now acquiring a campus for U-46 that would be about 30 acres. And the benefits, if you build a middle school and elementary school on the same ground, the benefits of scale are all of a sudden you don't have to have double the parking, double the bus drop-offs. You can take advantage and use some of those spaces for both of those schools. So we can do things very efficiently here. And that's why this is a very attractive property for us. And then the only other point out is if we are working to get an architect assigned, a construction project off this fall, such that it would be ready in the fall of 2026. And that was part of a big part of the reason why the timing shifted out a year. Kimball Middle School is the first of our existing middle schools that we are proposing a pretty sizable addition. So Kimball is in Elgin. It sits on McLean Boulevard. It was built in, I believe, the late 50s, early 60s. So it is, about the same vintage as some of our other middle schools, but it has held up actually surprisingly well. It sits on also, if for a school in this part of Elgin, it's on a nice piece of property as well. It's almost 20 acres, and they have a huge out behind the school, say from McLean, out behind the building, that would offer lots of opportunities for doing different types of additions. So we have some designs that have already been proposed for that. And again, if the project was approved this fall, we would work over make sure that most of the heavy construction happened over the next 2 summers to minimize disruption while the students are in session. We would not plan to have to relocate students during this time. They would stay in school at Kimball. And then we would plan to have the project completed such that we could take occupancy in the new addition in August of 2026. Kenyon Woods is the other school in South Elgin that we are proposing to do a fairly significant addition. Kenyon is our newest middle school by far. It's a beautiful school if you have been there. When it was built in 2000, I can't remember, 2003 or 2005, there's one wing of the building that the second floor was like roughed in, but it was never finished. So if you look at the building from the outside, it looks weird because it's like a sort of a wedge building. 2 out of the 3 wings have a first and a second floor. And then if you're walking down the hallway, you just hit a brick wall and it just stops. No floor on the other wing. Finish that wing, that would be another 9 classrooms, 2 science labs, and it would allow us to free the enrollment quite a bit. But you see this is proposing to 125 students. And when we did the tours of some of our oldest middle schools with our board members, and then we visited Kenyon Woods, I can just tell you guys, it feels like it's a different district. It really does. So I think if we can make shifts where we're getting more of our kids into schools like Kenyon Woods and like some of the new schools that we're building. And again, there's nothing wrong with some of these buildings that we're retiring. They've served us well for some cases close to 100 years. It's just, it's time to get our kids in the safe schools, safe modern schools that U-46 deserves as much as districts anywhere, right? And again, if this project was started this fall, this is probably the least significant of the 3, so it would certainly be ready in the fall of 2026. The other middle schools, I would leave Canton, Eastview, Lawton, and Taft. They are all fairly well positioned, to different extent, different levels, to receive these 6th grade students and support the teaming model that Dr. Acevedo described. There are some updates that would be needed. We know that, and we would want to make sure that we could try to prioritize as many of those before this shift as we could. And things like the front entrance, that's something that we know when we did these sessions, Unite U-46 last year. That was one concern, both at the elementary and at the middle school level, was that sometimes as a parent, you come up, you don't even know necessarily which door is the front door. You're not sure if you're in the right place. Somebody buzzes you in, you're not sure where you're supposed to go. In some cases, there's not someone there to greet you necessarily and take you. So these are some things that we know we need to do a better job of. And we've already been looking at what it would take to these 4 buildings. And 3 of the 4, I think it would be something that would be fairly simple and could be implemented before we'd make the shift. Larson may be a little bit more involved. Mark Spicone, I'm sure could agree. But Larson is one that we're spending a lot of time looking at options in terms of how make the necessary aids to make sure that those students also experience an amazing experience as 6th graders when they shift to middle school. And then, as I mentioned, it was a very difficult decision to retire Abbott and Ellis, and certainly not one that we took lightly. The more these buildings, some of the things that just could not be overcome. It's the age and the condition of the buildings. It's that they become expensive and difficult to maintain and to operate. It's the locations. It's the size of the lot. They both have challenging elevation differences, which make areas of the building not accessible to all of our students and families, which is just not something that we can have. And we just could not come up with a cost-effective way to address those things. Plus, I think you probably all know, anytime you're doing renovations and updates on a per square foot basis, that's way more expensive and difficult than building new construction. And it just was really I think we could spend a lot of money trying to update these buildings, and we wouldn't have necessarily been happy with what we'd come up with in the end. So again, it was a tough decision, but it was part of the recommendation that was brought forward and that ultimately was approved by the board. So shifting now, I wanted to have a couple slides looking at capacities. And when I say capacity, it's basically how many students each of our schools can serve, right? So this is a heat map showing from last year. We're still finalizing this year's enrollment data. So a lot of these slides are from 22-23, just because we haven't come up with our sort of official year. It's supposed to be taken as of September 30th, and we're on a lot of reports this week. But anyway, that's why a lot of these these charts show last year's data. But the heat map, only point I was trying to make here is we are not evenly using our middle schools at all right now. We have schools like the TEF, the one in red, which is running at or above what their capacity should be. So they are over 100% capacity. And then there's a school just to the north of there. Canton's enrollment this year looks more like an elementary school. They have fewer than 400 students in a middle school, and it's about the same size as Teft. And Teft has 850. So when you look at that and the fact that they're neighboring there, that's something to address. And whether that's through boundary adjustments, it's certainly going to have to be with boundary adjustments. It's also things like program placement, because Canton does offer dual language programming. We have a lot of kids who live in the Canton area who are dual language program. They need to attend Teft. So that drives up the enrollment in Teft, drives down the enrollment in Canton. So if we can offer dual language in Canton, that's going to help balance between those two schools. We would ideally like to see all of our schools run more in that 80 to 90% capacity. And you can just see now we have a few that are running well low. We've got at least one that's running over capacity. So this is just something that as we do the work and as we still look at different boundary scenarios, which I know you guys are all anxious to see and we'll get into more, I promise. This is something that we definitely are taking into consideration. And then the numbers on this page shows previous. These are the number of students that we are planning each of the buildings could serve after all of the change made. So you see the first three lines in the table. This is the new middle school that we're proposing, adjacent to Hilltop Elementary, and then it's Kenyon and Kimball after the additions. And I'm guessing, you tell me if I'm right or wrong, I'm guessing the reaction from some people may be 1,100 kids in a middle sounds like a lot. That sounds like a big number. It's bigger than any of the schools we're running today. And you're right. And I promise I will show you why we're comfortable with that approach and why that's the approach that we're coming forward with. The other thing you'll notice is that most of the numbers in this table are at nice round numbers of either 1125 or 750. Larson is a school that we are intentionally going to increase the enrollment beyond where they are, because that school does some smaller classrooms, smaller common space, and we really feel like crowding a bunch of students into Larson, which at that point will be our oldest middle school, would not be a great first middle school experience for a lot of those students. So we're going to keep those teams a little smaller and keep the total enrollment down. But for the other schools, the way we came up with those numbers, it's back to what Dr. Acevedo was describing, this teaming model. So for the schools that are at 750, so Hawk Hollow, Eastview, Canton, and Teft, they would have 2 teams per grade level. And these yellow, and each of those would represent a team. So you see in 6th grade, you 6A and 6B. And then if you remember the chart that Dr. Acevedo had with the little cycle looking thing, and it had the kids rotating between the different classes, there would be 5 classes in each team with about 25 kids per class. So the very quick math, I promise you won't have to do any math tonight. 1 classes times 5 gives you 125 kids per team. 125 times the 6 teams would give you 750. Okay, so I promise there won't be any more math. And then the same thing with the 1125. It's 1125 just mean you'd have 3 teams per level. So these schools that we're planning for 3 teams per grade level, part of the reason, like I think some reaction that we'd had to people when we talked about doing an addition at Kenyon Woods was a little bit of surprise, because Kenyon Woods is pretty big, very modern middle school right now compared to the others in the district. But if we're going to go to 3 teams per grade level, they do need those additional science labs. They do need those additional classrooms, the additional flex spaces to carry out this with 3 teams. If we didn't do anything to Kenyon Woods, they would very comfortably handle the 2 teams per grade level, but we feel like it'd be a mixed opportunity because we would be able to send as many kids to Kenyon as we would like. So that's really where that recommendation comes from. And then Kimball, it's going to be a pretty sizable addition to Kimball. It's about to the same scale as the addition that we're doing at Hawk Hollow. So it's adding, I don't want to guess, I don't remember how many square feet we were talking about adding, but it's like 40, 50,000 square feet would be adding on the back of the school. Entire new. So to get to 3 teams per grade level, we would still be able to support this teaming or like school within a school kind of small learning community sort of environment. It's just going to be lots of individual teams, but they're still going to be in classes with the same kids, with seeing the same teachers, the lockers, sort of the same area. It's just going to be in the gymnasium, the cafeteria, and the library and things like that with more students. But we think it's very doable. But again, that's how some of those capacity numbers were arrived at. Now, this slide is just to kind of match our projected enrollments with those capacities that I just showed, just to prove to you that we would have space to open our 6th grade or to move our 6th graders up to middle school, open these schools in the 26-27 school year, and we would have capacity. And if you notice on this slide, we say the projected capacity was 6,975, and this shows projected enrollment of 6,780. You might be thinking that looks awfully tight. Are you sure that you'd have enough space if the enrollment was just a little bit higher? And the only thing I would say here is we have more wiggle room than you because this just shows if these classes were exactly 25 kids, but if instead we had classes of 27 or 28 students, which we already have at schools like Eastview, Taft, all of a sudden, instead of 750 students, they'd still run 2 teams per grade level. They'd still need the same number of classrooms, but they could comfortably have an enrollment of 820, 850 students, which we've comfortably fit in those buildings before. So there's more cushion there than it may appear based on these nice, round, easy numbers. Okay, now we're at boundaries. So maybe they're here to know us get through it and get to this slide. So I'll do my best here. Okay, so what I'm showing here, this is this interactive boundary map that we have put up on our website probably in the last year. And if you haven't seen it or haven't, I would urge you to check it out. It's pretty cool. So it's available on under the Our Schools tab on our website, or you can use the QR code that's in your packets and it'll take you straight there. But what it allows you to do, it's very like Google Maps, and you can kind of zoom in, pan around, you exactly where the boundaries hit relative to major roadways, where you might have subdivisions that fall right on one area, right on the other area. And what I would say is it's kind of interesting now. Where it'll become really interesting is we're going to use this tool as we go forward to put up proposed new boundaries. And once we do that, then I know people are going to say, I want to see where my house falls or where my neighborhood and subdivision falls and how this is going to impact me or my friends or my relatives. So this is going to become a tool that we're going to use very heavily going forward. And I'd encourage you, if none of you have checked it out, to check it out. But what I wanted to show here, because we're talking mainly about middle school tonight, is, and I hope you can see that, these dots are small, but on this map, it's very weird, is we don't have any middle schools south of Kenyon and Eastview. We have lots of elementary schools down in the Bartlett area. Eastview is in Bartlett, very northern edge of Bartlett. So what happens is these kids who live way down here, they're bused either to Eastview or they're bused to Kenyon Woods. So one of the decisions that we made to convert Hawk Hollow to middle school, I will be honest with you, that felt very counterintuitive to us at the beginning, because we said, seriously, in a district that we promote really to some of these neighborhoods that have been unserved for so long, and the first school we're going to build is in Bartlett. Like, are we sure? Does this make sense? But I'll tell you why we're doing that is because once that school opens in Bartlett, these kids will all attend Hawk Hollow Middle School. They won't be in Eastview, they won't be in Kenyon Woods. And what happens is the boundaries for the rest of the middle schools as well. Any middle school district that will have the same values when we do now. Not a guarantee. I mean, some closing buildings, we're building new schools, but even the schools that I talked about, the Larson, Eastview, Taft, Canton, the ones that we're not necessarily doing huge updates to, the boundary. Once we add Hollow here, it's going to push north, which is then going to push Canton. You know, Abbott will, those students, most of them will attend Kenyon innovations there. So the real, this beautiful is that we're also going to be providing opportunity for kids across the better school, okay, and better facilities. I mean, there are great staff at Ellison. Certainly don't hope that I'm not disparaging. There are going to be some elementary schools that we're going to decide that it makes most sense to retire, because based on the enrollment that we have right now, and we know we've got lots of elementary buildings that have very real needs that have to be addressed one way or the other, but it is just, we're going to have a really hard time justifying keeping the same number of elementary schools when you see the enrollment trends that I shared with you earlier. So those will be some difficult decisions that actually we're going to be bringing some data to these sessions and really looking for your feedback and your guidance this fall, because our commitment is that we bring recommendations the same way we did for middle school in September, before the end or before winter break. We bring similar recommendations to the board on our elementary schools. So we'll start getting into that some tonight, but certainly in the next couple of sessions this fall, we're going to be providing even more detail and asking for your help, because if you think about it, we have to make those decisions first on which buildings are we going to still have in our portfolio going forward. Where are we going to do additions? Where are we going to do up? We have to decide on all that first before we even begin to be drawing boundaries at the elementary level, right? And then I would tell you at the high school level, you know, we're going to still have the same 5 comprehensive high schools. There's no thought at all right now of, do we need to build a new high school? Do we need to close the high school? That would be the same 5 comprehensive high schools as well as the Dream Academy going forward. Changes at the high school level really will be more trying to address some of those people that I showed you the middle schools. We have things going on at the high school level, and it's probably not going to be possible every place across the district. Try to do that wherever we can. So those will be the things that we'll be doing at the high school level. It won't be wholesale changes. It'll probably just be cleaning up the edges of some of the existing boundaries and cleaning up some of those feeder patterns where we can. So I know that was probably a tease, and you probably were hoping to get more on boundaries. I hope you're not disappointed, but that's just sort of previewing some of the work to come and letting you know what our thoughts have been thus far and kind of where we stand. For the next portion of the presentation tonight, I'm going to turn over to Dr. Ann Williams, our Deputy Superintendent of Operations, and she's going to go into more detail about some of the elementary decisions that we're facing and the process that we'll be following to make those decisions. So, Dr. Williams.
Thank you, Brian. I am what stands between you and work. So I'm going to go through my slides really quickly because we need your input. Over the past 6 to 9 months, we spent quite a bit of time visiting our middle schools, and we are going to do exactly the same thing for our elementary schools. So I'm going to provide you with a little bit of data. This slide looks at our elementary enrollment trend. We have seen a decline in our kindergarten cohort for many, many years. As you can see, starting on the left, it is the reported decline. And then when you get to 2026, you see a huge drop off. That's when we're moving the 5th graders out, or the 6th graders, I'm sorry, out to the middle school. But we are projecting continued declines to the tune of 40% fewer students, as Dr. Johnson mentioned earlier. This is similar to the slide that Brian showed you with the heat map for middle school. This includes updated projections for birth rate and enrollment. And as Brian mentioned, we want to be in the gray. We want to have most of our schools at 80% capacity. As you can see here, most of our schools are below that point. We thought it would be helpful to summarize the ages of our elementary schools. So as you can see here, more than 2/3 of our elementary schools were built prior to 1980. Last year, this slide may be familiar. This came directly from the presentation that we did in December of last year. These are some of the things that we would like to see in all of our schools moving forward. So keep this in mind as you start to prepare for the work and the input you'll provide shortly. These are the 8 schools that were recommended for renovation, rebuild, or retire from our elementary schools. Illinois Park, Lowry, McKinley, Side, Glenbrook, Century Oaks, and Parkwood. We were at Parkwood today, weren't we, Brian? These are the schools that we have already started to look at, to evaluate in the same way that we did our middle schools. And we will continue to move forward with that work. Into those schools, we look at all of our other elementary schools, starting with ones that were built prior to the 1990s. And we will look at all of the things that we want to incorporate into all of our elementary schools. So here's a list of some of the considerations: secure entries, updated libraries, all of these things, and some things that you will help us identify and prioritize tonight. Building analysis and priorities. We are doing a current audit of every building. We're looking at capacity. We're looking at the size, the acreage of the site, safety and security, accessibility, and of course, equitable access to the learning spaces. All students should be able to access all parts of the building. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Gunstein, who is going to get you started, giving us that valuable input we need from you. Thank you.
And why we are here. So let's take a few minutes to review some ground rules. We're here in the future direction of the school district. And remember to collect good ideas. Try to stay positive and focus on doing productive responses to activities. Make sure everyone at your table has the opportunity to speak and be respectful of everyone else's ideas and points of view. Monitor the clock to make sure you get done on time, and make sure your group consensus is recorded on this sheet at the side of the table. We are setting the clock, I believe, for 2 minutes. And at the end of the session, we'll collect these worksheets to be reviewed. In this worksheet, task 1, how important are each of the following planning perimeters for elementary facilities? Here, task 2. On this page, the top 5 planning priorities. Please rank the 5 criteria that your group thinks are the most important to you. Number 3 is another question or question. Now, we're going to also ask, there's a few people kind of sitting out. If you could kind of come and join the table, there's a bunch of empty, there's an empty table back there. The discussion.
Okay. This is a nice problem to have, that you guys seem like you're still anxious to talk, and that there hasn't been a mass exodus of people as soon as the presentation was over, where we're ready to go home and watch the Bears or something, right? So I appreciate you all sticking with us. They are winning. Wow, it's amazing. So what we're going to do tonight, sometimes we've done these sessions, and for you guys, there's a lot of familiar faces here, so you can back me on this one. Sometimes there's only been 6 or 7 tables, and we go around and we hear from each table kind of a quick summary of the discussion that you had and what points you'd like to leave with administration tonight, right? Tonight, because we have 22 tables, and because we've got a Bears game on and it's 8:40, what I think we'll do is just ask the volunteers, and we'll just listen to 2 or 3 groups. So one thing I want to tell you, please leave all of your stuff on the table, including the pink forms that hopefully you filled out. Make sure you signed in. There's a sign-in sheet on each table. And then if you have a question that maybe you don't want to ask us tonight, but you'd like us to get back to you on it, and we left those, I have a question form. And we will make sure to get you an answer from the right person in the district. If not tomorrow, it'll be next week. But we take those very seriously. So leave all that stuff on the table. I would love to hear from at least a few tables with things that you'd like to share. Volunteers. Yes, sir.
Decision, are making the decision for kids, not for other adults, right? We're looking at learning environments, things like that. I guess where we landed on prioritizing a lot of things that should focus learning environment programs, things like that. And I'm just going to have my 2 cents in there because I get very longer who didn't transition happen be in high school, and to take into account the social emotional impacts being a school now in the middle before transition, or I'm now separating from kids I've known all through grade school. She is one who spent a year at home when COVID hit. So there is now, luckily, kindergartners and things aren't experiencing that, but there's a group of kids, and we don't know how that trickles out into their adulthood, right? Year at home, being away, and all of that. So I know it's not going to be clean when you're reading boundaries. Not everybody's going to be happy with it, but have that in mind as that happens, right? That there's a group of kids that we have who's right in the middle now, right? Who dealt with that, and there's other things going on. So that's it.
Thank you very much. That is really good feedback. Next, there we go. No, I saw the hand up. You're up now.
Along the same lines, 7th grade need to start high school where the new boundaries would have them graduate so that they don't have to transfer. So this localized boundaries, changing prior full district change in 26-27, to minimize the disruption in learning and community and identity as far as who they're with and where they're going and that type of thing.
You got a little round of applause for that one, right? Yeah. Oh yeah. All right. Anybody else? You must know. No, anything you'd like to share about your conversation tonight? You're up. All right.
We had really good conversation because students that was from dual language, and special needs classrooms. So we kind of built our criteria around that, making sure that there's adequate spacing and focus areas if they need, they're overstimulated in the classroom. So a lot of ours, while it was hard to pick because all of them are very important, we kind of picked the ones that would positively affect the one. So like, for instance, our number 1 was B, which was increase the equitable access to educational programs. So if you're doing that, expand it to different schools, in terms of doing that, like you said, it will positively already balance the enrollment because now you have the availability. So we placed it in order of ways that the ones that we pick would affect the other ones, so that you're not definitely having to like pick or choose which one's better than the other. So that's how we did ours. And then I said, can we change the high school hours to mimic the kids, because they go from 8 to 8:30 to 9 up to 7:40. So can we look into changing to an 8 o'clock start time?
Okay. Yeah, the busing would be the. Okay. Anybody else? Heather.
You guys all know, those who know me know I will talk. The big thing at our table was class sizes, that we felt that, we've heard for years we have not had the space to have equitable class sizes in the way we wanted. If we have more space now, because, all of this is still focused on keeping class sizes the same, and we have a big issue with that. So we felt there should be a lot more emphasis into class size planning incorporated into the overall plan. And then my other 2 cents, this is not the first time we've heard about small learning communities. This was something that was angled in front of us with Pathways, Magnet Academies as the main reason to do that. And then it was scrapped from the plan, and for the most part. And so, there's a lot of questions, especially with such a big dual language district. So learning communities is much harder to do at Midland High School when you've only got a couple classes that are dual language. So feasibility is just much more challenging. And so those are the main 2 things.
Thank you, Heather. Heather's good. Heather always pushes us and I appreciate it. She's at all these sessions. She's always got good feedback and suggestions. And so thank you. Thank you for that. Anybody else? Going once, going twice, not up. Yes, we got one more.
I wasn't forced by all means. But I work in the district. I have 4 kids all over the district from preschool to high school. So what was very important at our table was and to me too, I feel like we need to balance out the enrollment throughout all the schools. I think my 7-year-old first grader goes to Nature Ridge, and I work at Parkwood, and we have a huge difference in size with what Nature Ridge provides, what Parkwood provides, only because, you know, we have kids coming from Prairie View for our dual language program at Nature Ridge. And so I feel like if we better utilize the space that we have at schools, the land that we have at our schools, I think it will even out our enrollment rather than having a school who's at 600 compared to a school that has kids that are, you know, we only have an enrollment of 277. So I think definitely looking at all that, you know, obviously looking at all the gifted, the dual language, the special education classes that we need throughout the district. I think that's very important. You know, a lot of the times too, that affects the parent involvement, because then you have kids who come from Prairie View to Nature Ridge who perhaps they don't want to drive the 15-20 minutes to get to Nature Ridge to attend a meeting or to an event. You know, and like, for example, our school is a walking school. Sometimes we have, you know, if on a rainy day or so, we have kids who can't come because we are a walking school, and perhaps maybe doing the enrollment or the base or the needs based on like our school boundaries, I think would be important too, you know, to just make it inclusive for everyone. I think we have a great school district. My daughter's a senior, so she's about to graduate, start in the district. So I think that just doing that would be a better option for all of our schools. And that's it. Thank you.
All right. I agree with everything she said, other than the enrollment count. She was off by a few students and you corrected her. 277, not 272. You got that. So, okay. Anybody else? Otherwise, we'll close for tonight. This slide, all I wanted to show was we've got another one of these scheduled for the next CAC meeting. We might need to find a bigger space because I see you guys waving the things. I am like really hot in here. That is a problem if we've got enough interest and enough engagement that we're going to need more room. You guys back here and your friends, please, because these sessions are important to us and it's important, you know, to hear from all of you. So the next one is November 2nd, and then we'll be working to schedule the other ones, which may or may not coincide with CAC meetings. We're looking to try to join forces wherever we can, but we have not scheduled the December meeting, and then we have not scheduled. I'm losing you guys totally, aren't I? It's time to. All right. So thank you very much. Have a great night. All right.